Good morning. So I'm going to pick up where we left off last week and hopefully read to the end of the curious incident. And if you remember, Christopher is with his mother. Things are not going incredibly well at her apartment. She has just told him that he wasn't going to be able to go take his math exam. And then Roger, Mr. Shears, went in and was kind of threatening to him. And the next morning, she goes in and tells Christopher that they're going to go back to Swindon. So they're driving in the car, and he's asking a lot of questions, and she's just saying to him, I just need you to be quiet for a while. So I'm going to pick up there. And I said, how long do you want me to be quiet for? And she said, Jesus. And then she said, half an hour, Christopher. I need you to be quiet for half an hour. And we drove all the way to Swindon, and it took 3 hours and 12 minutes, and we had to stop for petrol. And Mother bought me a Milky Bar, but I didn't eat it. And we got caught in a long traffic jam, which was caused by people slowing down to look at an accident on the other carriageway. And I tried to work out a formula to determine whether a traffic jam would be caused just by people slowing down, and how this was influenced by the density of the traffic, the speed of the traffic, and how quickly drivers braked when they saw the brake lights of the car in front of them. I was too tired because I hadn't slept the night before, because I was thinking about not being able to do my maths A-level, so I fell asleep. And when we got to Swindon, Mother had keys to the house, and we went in, and she said, hello, but there was no one home. There was no one there because it was 1:23 p.m. And I was frightened, but Mother said I would be safe, so I went up to my room and closed the door. I took Toby out of my pocket and let him run around, and I played Minesweeper, and I did the expert version in 174 seconds, which is 75 seconds longer than my best time. And then it was 6:35 p.m., and I heard Father come home in his van, and I moved the bed up against the door so he couldn't get in. And he came into the house, and he and Mother shouted at each other. And Father shouted, how the F did you get in here? And Mother shouted, this is my house too, in case you have forgotten. And Father shouted, is your effing fancy man here as well? And then I picked up the bongo drums that Uncle Terry had bought me, and I knelt down in the corner of the room, and I pressed my head into the join between the two walls, and I banged the drums, and I groaned, and I carried on doing this for an hour. And then Mother came into the room and said Father had gone. And she said Father had gone to stay with Rodri for a while, and we would get a place to live of our own in the next few weeks. Then I went into the garden, and I found Toby's cage behind the shed, and I brought it inside, cleaned it out, and put Toby back in it. And I asked Mother if I could do my maths A-level in the next day, and she said, I'm sorry, Christopher. And I said, can I do my maths A-level? And she said, you're not listening to me, are you, Christopher? And I said, I'm listening to you. And Mother said, I told you. I rang your headmistress. I told her you were in London. I told her you'd do it next year. And I said, but I'm here now, and I can take it. And Mother said, I'm sorry, Christopher. I was trying to do things properly. I was trying not to mess things up. And my chest began hurting again, and I folded my arms, and I rocked backward and forward and groaned. And Mother said, I didn't know we'd be coming back. But I carried on groaning and rocking backward and forward. And Mother said, come on, this isn't going to solve anything. Then she asked if I wanted to watch one of my Blue Planet videos about life under the Arctic ice or the migration of the humpback whales, but I didn't say anything because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do my maths A-level, and it was like pressing your thumbnail against a radiator when it's really hot and the pain starts, and it makes you want to cry, and the pain keeps hurting even when you take your thumb away from the radiator. Then Mother made me some carrots and broccoli and ketchup, but I didn't eat them. And I didn't sleep that night either. The next day, Mother drove me to school in Mr. Shears's car because we missed the bus. And when we're getting into the car, Mrs. Shears came across the road and said to Mother, you've got an effing nerve. And Mother said, get into the car, Christopher. But I couldn't get into the car because the door was locked. And Mrs. Shears said, so, has he finally dumped you too? Then Mother opened her door, and we got into the car and unlocked my door, and I got in and we drove away. And when we got to school, Siobhan said, so you're Christopher's mother. And Siobhan said that she was glad to see me again, and she asked if I was okay, and I said I was tired. And Mother explained that I was upset because I couldn't do my maths A level, so I hadn't been eating properly or sleeping properly. And when Mother went away, and I drew a picture of a bus using perspective so that I didn't think about the pain in my chest, and it looked like this. Pretty good. After lunch, Siobhan said that she had spoken to Mrs. Gascoigne and she still had my A-level papers in 3 sealed envelopes in her desk. So I asked if I could still do my A-level. And Siobhan said, I think so. We're going to ring the Reverend Peters this afternoon to make sure he can still come in and be your invigilator. And Mrs. Gascoigne is going to write a letter to the examination board to say that you're going to take the exam after all. And hopefully they'll say that's okay, but we can't know that for sure. Then she stopped talking for a few seconds. I thought I should let you know now so you could think about it. So I said, so I could think about what? And I thought about the question and I wasn't sure what the answer was because I wanted to do my maths A level, but I was very tired. And when I tried to think about maths, my brain didn't work properly. And when I tried to remember certain facts, like the logarithmic formula for the approximate number of prime numbers not greater than x, I couldn't remember them, and this made me frightened. And Siobhan said, you don't have to do it, Christopher. If you say you don't want to do it, no one's going to be angry with you, and it won't be wrong or illegal or stupid. It will just be what you want, and that will be fine. And I said, I want to do it, because I don't like it when I put things in my timetable and I have to take them out again, because when I do, it makes me feel sick. And Siobhan said, okay. And she rang the Reverend Peters, and he came into school at 3:27 p.m. and he said, so young man, are we ready to roll? And I did my paper 1 of my maths A level sitting in the art room, and the Reverend Peters was the invigilator, and he sat at a desk while I did the exam, and he read a book called The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and ate a sandwich. And in the middle of the exam, he went and smoked a cigarette outside the window, but he watched me through the window in case I cheated. And when I opened the paper and read through it, I couldn't think how to answer any of the questions, and also I couldn't breathe properly. And I wanted to hit somebody or stab them with my Swiss Army knife, but there wasn't anyone to hit or stab with my Swiss Army knife except the Reverend Peters, and he was very tall. And if I hit him or stabbed him with my Swiss Army knife, he wouldn't be my proctor for the rest of the exam. So I took deep breaths like Siobhan said I should do when I want to hit someone in school, and I counted 50 breaths and did cubes of the cardinal numbers as I counted. And that made me feel a little calmer. But the exam was 2 hours long and 20 minutes had already gone, so I had to work really fast and I didn't have time to check my answers properly. And that night, just after I got home, Father came back to the house and I screamed, but Mother said she wouldn't let anything bad happen to me, and I went into the garden and lay down and looked at the stars in the sky and made myself negligible. And when Father came out of the house, he looked at me for a long time, and then he punched the fence and made a hole in it and went away. And I slept a little bit that night because I was doing my maths A level and I had some spinach soup for supper. And the next day I did paper 2, and the Reverend Peters read The Cost of Discipleship again, but this time he didn't smoke a cigarette, and Siobhan made me go into the toilets before the exam and sit on my own and do breathing and counting. And I was playing the 11th hour on my computer that evening when a taxi stopped outside of our house. Mr. Shears was in the taxi, and he got out of the taxi and threw a big cardboard box of things belonging to Mother onto the lawn. And they were a hairdryer and some knickers and some L'Oreal shampoo and a box of muesli and 2 books and a photograph of me in a silver frame. And the glass in the photograph frame broke when it fell onto the grass. Then he got some keys out of his pocket and got into his car and drove away, and Mother ran out of the house and she ran into the street and shouted, "Don't effing bother coming back either." And she threw the box of muesli and it hit the boot of his car as he drove away. And Mrs. Shears was looking out of her window when Mother did this. The next day I did paper 3, and the Reverend Peters read the Daily Mail and smoked 3 cigarettes, and this was my first question. Prove the following result. A triangle with the sides that can be written in the form of n squared plus 1, n squared minus 1, and 2n, where n is greater than 1, is right-angled. Show by means of a counterexample that the converse is false. And I was going to write out how I answered the question, except Siobhan said wasn't very interesting. But I said it was. And she said people wouldn't want to read the answers to a math question in a book. And she said I could put the answer in an appendix, which is an extra chapter at the end of a book, which people can read if they want to. And that's what I've done. And then my chest didn't hurt so much, and it was easier to breathe. But I still felt sick because I didn't know if I'd done well in the exam, and because I didn't know if the examination board would allow my exam paper to be considered after Miss Glasgow had told them I wasn't going to take it. And it's best if you know a good thing is going to happen, like an eclipse or getting a microscope for Christmas. And it's bad if you know a bad thing is going to happen, like having a filling or going to France. But I think it's worst if you don't know whether it is a good thing or a bad thing which is going to happen. And Father came around to the house that night, and I was sitting on the sofa watching University Challenge and just answering the science questions. And he stood in the doorway of the living room and he said, "Don't scream, okay, Christopher? I'm not going to hurt you." And Mother was standing behind him, so I didn't scream. Then he came a bit closer to me and he crouched down like you do with dogs to show that you're not an aggressor. And he said, "I wanted to ask you how the exam went." But I didn't say anything. And Mother said, "Tell him, Christopher." But I still didn't say anything. And Mother said, "Please, Christopher." So I said, "I don't know if I got all the questions right because I was really tired and I hadn't eaten any food, so I couldn't think properly." And then Father nodded and he didn't say anything for a short while. Then he said, "Thank you." And I said, "What for?" And he said, "Just thank you." And then he said, "I'm very proud of you, Christopher. Very proud. I'm sure you did really well." And then he went away and I watched the rest of University Challenge. And the next week, Father told Mother she had to move out of the house and she couldn't because she didn't have any money to pay rent for a flat. And I asked if Father would be arrested and go to prison for killing Wellington because we could live in the house if he was in prison. But Mother said the police would only arrest Father if Mrs. Shears did what is called pressing charges, which is telling the police you want them to arrest someone for a crime. Because the police don't arrest people for little crimes unless you ask them, and Mother said that killing a dog was only a little crime. But then everything was okay because Mother got a job on the till in a gardening center, and the doctor gave her pills to take every morning to stop her from feeling sad, except that sometimes they made her dizzy and she fell over if she stood up too fast. So we moved into a room in a big house that was made of red bricks, and the bed was in the same room as the kitchen, and I didn't like it because it was small and the corridor was painted brown, and there was a toilet and a bathroom that other people used, and Mother had to clean it before I used it or I wouldn't use it. And sometimes I wet myself because other people were in the bathroom. And the corridor outside the room smelled like gravy and the bleach they used to clean the toilets at school. And inside the room it smelled like socks and pine air freshener. And I didn't like waiting to find out about my maths A level. And whenever I thought about the future, I couldn't see anything clearly in my head, and that made a panic start. So Siobhan said I shouldn't think about the future. She said, just think about today. Think about things that have happened, especially about good things that have happened. And one of the good things was that Mother bought me a wooden puzzle which looked like this. And you had to detach the top part of the puzzle from the bottom part, and it was really difficult. And another good thing was that I helped Mother paint her room white with a hint of wheat, except I got paint in my hair and she wanted to wash it out by rubbing shampoo on my head when I was in the bath, but I wouldn't let her. So there was paint in my hair for 5 days, and then I cut it out with a pair of scissors. But there were more bad things than good things, and one of them was that Mother didn't get back from work until 5:30 p.m. So I had to go to Father's house between 3:49 p.m. and 5:30 because I wasn't allowed to be on my own, and Mother said I didn't have a choice. So I pushed the bed against the door in case Father tried to come in, and sometimes he tried to talk to me through the door, but I didn't answer him. And sometimes I heard him sitting on the floor outside the door quietly for a long time. I'm going to stop there. There's like 3 more pages, but I want you to think about how you would anticipate this is going to end with Christopher and his father. So take a minute and post your response in the discussion board.